Mick Whelan, General Secretary of ASLEF. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Absolute pleasure.
So I want to start by general elections in UK, which taking place on 12th December. And it is seen that one of the very important election in Britain's history. So what are your, as a British movement, or labour movement, or as a unions, what is your expectations and thoughts about outcome of the elections?
Well, I believe that Labour are going to succeed. I think that the people of the UK have had far too much of austerity, are fed up with paying for the wrongs created by bankers. The reality is that the people of the UK have seen their incomes decrease. We've seen 1/5 of the population go into poverty. We've seen homelessness increase. We've seen attacks on our National Health Service. We've become a less tolerant society because of the pressures put upon us by these political decisions. And as we've seen across Europe, as you apply these neoliberal pressures, as you hurt ordinary working people, then the rhetoric against other working people from across the world rises. And that isn't the place we want to be in an island nation.
And linked with that, we are talking about Brexit. Actually, we've been talking about Brexit for the last 3 years, one of the most important topic for the UK. So as a ASLEF and Union British Labour, what is your stand like in Brexit, and after Brexit, what kind of effects will it have on labour movement and hard-working people of United Kingdom?
I think the decision for Mr Cameron to promise a referendum on Brexit, which he didn't believe in, just so he could save 7 seats from a right-wing UKIP party, will probably go down as one of the worst political decisions of all time. I think I've heard it described as the worst political decision since Lord North gave away the colonies to America. The reality of that then is it gives us a chance to reevaluate politically and industrially and strategically where we need to be. Now, I'm a Democrat. I believe that if the people have voted for something, that we should carry it out. But I don't believe everybody understood the full implications. So I've looked at the deals that have been done by the party in power, the Conservatives. Theresa May's deals were abysmal. Boris's deals are even worse, and what they would do to future workers' rights and do to this country isn't a place we want to be. I believe we should honour the Brexit deal, but with a Brexit deal that supports the UK, that gives it a future and doesn't hurt what we're going to do to our manufacturing base or what we're going to do for our people going forward. So I believe there's an opportunity now in this general election for the people to speak, to have a Labour government in that will renegotiate a deal and then give the people the choice again between the deal that's been done with the full information and whether they want to remain or not.
Yeah, and coming to Kurdish question, like as we talked just before the interview, that you've been long-standing in solidarity with Kurdish movement, and as ASLEF, you are part of Freedom for Öcalan campaign as well. I just wanted to ask, what does this solidarity mean to you and your union?
Well, for us, we've been around 139 years. And we've campaigned against fascism, we've campaigned against racism, continually for that. The history of the Labour movement, the history of train drivers in the UK has been standing up for common people in solidarity everywhere. And the right for self-determination, the right for freedom. We've seen time and time again the Kurdish people being used in the forefront of fighting for those things. And then, like we see recently, when the war is over, being cast aside and their needs not being considered. That can't happen. If we're good enough to die for people, you're good enough to fight for people, you're good enough to have the same rights as other people.
The labour movement in Turkey and unions are the opposition, mostly are under a big attack of Erdogan's regime as well. Do you have any contact with democratic unions in Turkey?
We do, but not as much as we'd like. I mean, we belong to a number of international federations, an awful lot of international transport federations, and we give support to workers everywhere. And when we're asked to go and speak and talk to people and give our views, even if it's with people that don't share our views, we're quite happy to do so, because you have to have that dialogue. You have to have that debate for people to understand that the world is looking at what's happening everywhere else. And, we've run a lot of campaigns internationally. I mean, the big DFL one. In Turkey, fighting for the workers' rights there. So we do it, and we look forward to doing it again when we can.
And with attacks internally against Kurds by Turkish state now since 9th of October, they are attacking Kurds in North and East Syria as well, and which last year in 2018 they attacked Afrin and they invaded Afrin as well, and now they are invading more part of northern Syria, and we are talking about ethnic cleansing and war crimes. And what's your reaction against the Turkish invasion in North and East Syria?
I was happy to be one of the 13 British General Secretaries that wrote that letter to Boris Johnson, which we're still waiting for appropriate response from, condemning Trump leaving Syria, condemning Turkey invading Syria, and highlighting the problems of the Kurds in the past. You know, ethnic cleansing shouldn't happen anywhere. People should be supported, they should be looked after. And you know, you look at the writings of Alaettin, he's always spoke about having a peaceful movement to solve the process. He spoke about women being at the forefront of the process. This isn't an antagonistic, revengeful self-determination. This is just a right to share in a democracy, a right to have a homeland, a right to decide what people want to do. And if we have that right here, and we say that everyone should have that right, then we should put that microscope or that searchlight on those areas where people don't have it, until we are sure that people aren't going to be tortured, people aren't going to be kidnapped, people aren't going to be killed, people aren't going to be hurt, and then they are going to get the rights that they need in the way in which they should be achieved.
Mm-hmm. And also we're not just talking about the security of Middle East as well, because when Middle East is not secure, and especially the region we are talking about, which are holding thousands of ISIS members, do you think it's going to affect also the security of UK as well?
Naturally, we've seen many attacks across the UK in recent years, particularly in London. And that's because of this changing nature of a particularly nasty world in which certain people, their dogma takes them to want to hurt other people. And if we leave the Kurds alone and they don't have the resources to deal with the thousands of ISIS prisoners, right, that have been captured in this wonderful war that Donald Trump claims that he won, that seems to have done it single-handed without the actual people who actually did the work, who put their bodies and their futures on the line, and we don't give that support, then they will go back, they'll go back to their enclaves, and not only across the Middle East but across the world, they will spread their poison and put the world at risk again.
And lastly, when we look at the British government, like against this invasion, actually their reaction has been nearly invisible and very soft reaction. So in this case, like Labour movement, British public, what needs to be done in this case?
I think the Free Öcalan campaign is one of the highest profile campaigns. I mean, I was there in Durham Miners when Ibrahim spoke to 250,000 people. I had the privilege of having our logo on the banner down at Tolpuddle this year, and it's about getting the message out. I think in these current times where people are so insular in the UK because there's so many of their own problems, it's sometimes harder to get that message across. So, but the reality is that people everywhere should have the same rights and same abilities, and we should fight as people to make that happen. And we have a difficulty. I mean, I don't normally agree with Mr. Macron very often, but at least he stood up and said what the Turks are doing wrong, and that if we're part of NATO, NATO should be saying to Turkey, hold on, this isn't right, and we should correct it. So maybe we need to put more pressure on the other members of NATO, and more pressure on the British government as a member of NATO to pull Mr. Erdogan back into line. Otherwise, we should consider whether he should be in NATO or any other groups that he wants to join, such as the EEC in future.
Mick Whelan, the General Secretary of ASLEF, thank you very much for being with us today.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you.